It's just a video log, just putting some thoughts down. Been letting go, cutting ties, letting women go for real, for real. It's been a bit of a challenge for me throughout my life, but I feel like I'm getting better at it. The more the more you gotta let go, the better you get at it. I guess repetitions. Sometimes, I miss them, or like my body misses them. Like I feel like my body be like, "Yo, where's she at?" type shit. But it's all good, It's all good. One door closes, a better one opens. Yeah. Maybe it's for the best for everybody, I've been thinking about the relationship between the lungs and the heart and the power of meditation and the neurophysiology of consciousness. And so I looked into like blood flow, like how does blood flow through the heart? First of all, blood comes from bone marrow, right? All right, so arteries carry blood away from the heart. Veins carry blood to the heart, right? So with bones, apparently we have arteries that enter the bone and branch out into smaller pieces. Yeah, didn't know that. So basically, it says new stem. No. Blood flows from high pressure to low pressure. I'm reading Google, by the way. I've been real actively researching because again, research is a lifestyle. But basically, your bones produce your blood, and then it flows through the heart. The heart is kind of like a way station. It kind of it's like it goes into the heart, and then the heart will send it to the lungs to get some oxygen and drop off the CO2. Then it comes back through the heart, and then the heart is kind of like serving, all right, got you from the bones, boom. Send you to the lungs, boom. Get you back from the lungs, boom. Oh, dish you off back to the, head and arms, and then down. So you got part of your aorta that goes up, and then part goes down, right? Here's the kicker, right? Because I think that's one of the good things. I feel like I'm being enlightened, I feel like I'm being enlightened. That's why I'm making these clips. But basically, when I breathe, watch this. Watch me. Watch me do this. All right, look, I just put mad air into my lungs, right? In the middle of my chest, I have a heart. And then on both sides, I have two lungs, right? So I'm exhaling now, but when I breathe in, I'm bringing in air. So when the heart sends that blood to the lungs, the air I just breathed in, the oxygen, goes to the blood, boom. Now when I exhale, that's all the carbon dioxide that just got dropped off by the blood. Now, To a certain extent, this is kind of semi-theoretical, only because I've never cut a person up to see, like, you know, is this what actually goes on? But I'm just putting all these theories together. Even though it may or may not be true, but I've never seen inside of a human body to know that it actually does these things. I'm just leaning on other people's understanding, basically. So I exhale carbon dioxide, right? My muscles, if you ever did exercise, you know what oxygen debt is, right? So you exercise a lot, boom, 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 your arms get tired. They need oxygen to keep going. That's why, like, you gotta take a break, let it get a little more oxygen, and then you got the energy again. Okay. So what that means is that, and they tell you this when you exercise, and to breathe, like breathe fully, not them shallow breaths, because now you're depriving oxygen. You're pulling less oxygen into your body, which means less oxygen is getting into your blood, right? Which means that less oxygen is getting to your thighs, your arms, your head, everything, right? So by breathing more deeply, meditation, even just the breathing part by itself, you breathe the air in, you bring more oxygen in, all right? So now the blood is more full of, it's the capacity of oxygen. I don't know what the limit is, like how many oxygen, and on the board I broke down like compounds, molecules, elements, atoms, quarks, etc. It's like, we're not gonna go that way right now, but just oxygen as an element. How much oxygen can one blood vessel hold? I don't know. Good question though. So basically, whatever it is there's more. Let's just say there's more because I'm breathing more deeply and bring more in. All right, cool. If that's the case, let's suppose that is the case, that when I breathe more deeply, I bring more oxygen into the body, and now my limbs and my whole body just has more oxygen to use for whatever reason. Then, not sure where I was going with this. Slips me for a second, but that's basically what I've been thinking about. Like, the amount of oxygen is differential depending on breathing, which I guess where I was going was more like because some people say they don't meditate, or like they don't see the point where they can't do it. This is a benefit in meditation to oxygenate your blood more, which may decrease that oxygen debt. Well, you're still gonna experience it, but it just may cost more. You may pay down on that debt, basically. Yeah. Not cost more, but you pay more onto that debt. You have more oxygen to use, so you may be able to run for a longer time. You may be able to do 20 push-ups instead of 10. It's gonna take more to tire you out. Now, here's a whole separate thought I've been thinking about. Well, one, I wanted to coin the phrase a heart hug. So basically in this process, because your heart is here and your lungs are here, you can hug your heart with your lungs. Like when you breathe in and they fill up with air, they press against the sides of the heart. Now the heart is beating, right? And when you breathe slowly, your heartbeat slows down. Right. And so, two parts. One, deep breathing slows your heart rate down. Two, it gives your body more oxygen to use. Three, your heart don't gotta work as hard, like, cause your heart is serving, right? When you breathing fast, your heart rate up, it's serving like this. When you breathe slow, it's like, like on a conveyor belt. The blood is on a conveyor belt, and the heart is just that work of it. I gotta like move it from one belt to the next, and it's just less strain on the heart to like, Other thing I was thinking about was we learned about this guy, Ramon E. Cajal. He had these drawings of neurons that look like tree branches. Basically, you got like the soma, like the cell body of the neuron. let's say like my elbow is a cell body, and then you got like my fingers would be like dendrites that reach out, and then say my shoulder is like well, this part of my arm, my bicep, and my shoulder are the axon. So like you got a bunch of these elbows in your brain with these fingers, and the fingers are touching another shoulder, right? So this is a whole nother neuron. So basically, this neuron sends an electrical signal to the shoulder, and these fingers pick it up, boom. It comes down here, yeah. Then flows all the way through, boom. Then another one picks it up, boom. So he had these drawings that looked kind of like a bunch of tree branches. Like you got like this single part, and then one cell body might have multiple like hands or forearms attached to it with multiple fingers, basically. So it just looks like a bush, almost like a shrub or something, just like a bunch of small branches. And he was saying like this is the makeup of the brain on a physical level. Like if you physically cut a piece of somebody's brain, zoomed in with a microscope, you would see like all these little branches. The neuroscientists that we've been listening to in these classes don't concede the existence of a soul. They tend to focus on more like, I guess, what they can prove in scientific methods, I guess. No shade to them, just drawing a distinction. I do concede the existence of a soul. And so my understanding is that although we're not aware of it, the soul connects the elbows and the fingers to other shoulders. Like the soul basically decides which elbows and which shoulders are connected and how they're connected. And we know this psychologically because we understand associations, and we know that through like training people. Like anybody can associate one thing. You associate a red bandana with Bloods. Like there's red bandanas, and then there's a social organization that have no relationship to each other except the fact that you've seen them together. So in your mind, even when you're not around them, in your mind, you probably connect two and two together, right? Which means that the memory of one might spark or prime you to remember the other one. So there's some connection going on in your brain that correlates with what's the connection that's going on in your mind. So the mind and the brain are like very close. And in some ways, this is my working theory that the brain is a physical manifestation of the mind, which is like a mental product. But then there's a soul that's kind of basically like the algorithm. The soul is like me, actually. Not me as in ego, like the persona that I am. The soul is like one piece of God that animates this flesh. But in that animation, there is a certain level of consciousness. And so I can basically choose and create associations in my own mind. And I can create associations between brain structures and brain areas too that correlate with the mental associations. For example, listening to these stories about these studies, let's just say stories, same difference, about long-term memory and different areas of the brain that's associated with long-term memory, or different areas of the brain that's associated with craving, like craving something, which I believe is associated with like basal ganglia. Memory is more associated with like hippocampus or the amygdala, right? But what if I deliberately choose to pair them together? So like every time I crave a hamburger, I also look at a picture of the last time I went to Six Flags. Over and over again, like I keep doing this like a training. So I'm say I do it like 1,000 times. is my association between my craving for hamburgers and the memory of that, or either the sight of the photo or the memory of the actual event that the photo is capturing. So the photo is kind of like a proxy for that event. Does that mean that there's also a neuron, like an elbow and some fingers, stretching from my basal ganglia to my hippocampus or hippocampi? Because you got two. So I don't know if that's like known, but this is my working hypothesis that yes, that is what's going on, you know. And so I've been thinking about it, like, if that's the case, then maybe not for everybody, but I feel empowered with that knowledge. Like maybe it's possible. Well, I guess I believe it's possible to rewire your own brain. I mean, there's videos about that online, and they talk about rewiring it, but I haven't heard them like ever speak about it on a physiological level. But I mean, physiologically rewiring. Like if all of these neurons, these elbows and fingers are wires, say they like fiber optic wiring, can you cut some and then move them somewhere else? Like, can you redo the makeup, the setup of what it is? And so my thinking is that yes, you can. You can be very deliberate in that, or you can just be pushed around by your superego and the society you live around and your circumstances, or even pushed around by your id and your urges and the drives and the subconscious mind and the things that you probably don't really pay too much attention to. Well, I like the hope, I guess, in the fact that you can psych yourself up too, not just out. Like you can psych yourself in, which brings to my whole concept of psychological advantageousness. Psychological advantageousness is assuming that a soul exists. And as a soul in a body, all beliefs are arbitrary, right? So you can believe the sky is blue, you can believe the sky is red. From this framework, conceptually looking at psychological advantageous, the assumption is that all beliefs are arbitrary and they're equal to some extent. They're equal in that you could choose them. They're not equal in the outcomes that they yield in your life. And so the concept of psychological advantageousness refers to, one, the mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure, and then two, the favor or the impact on a person's quality of life. So when we say like mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure, that's literally the layout of the elbows and the fingers, which is on a physical level, but there's a mental component associated with it. So you have, on a physical level, I have neurons that are connected to, different parts of my brain. There's wiring in here, and they're connected and associated with each other. When one fires, the other fires. Neurons that wire together, fire together, something like that, right? On a mental level, my thoughts and my emotions, my learning, my memories, my cognitions, my beliefs are all mingled and mixed together, And so that forms the infrastructure, because that forms cognitive schemas, that forms dispositions, which I frame disposition is like the echo of the mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure. Kind of like, if you yell in a canyon, like that sound at the end is your disposition, because the disposition kind of bubbles up from this arrangement that I have. This arrangement that I'm having is basically the soul's conclusion or modus vivendi about how to operate this vessel. And so we get into the idea of like gamification or keybinds. So we talk about how the extent to which souls can rewire their brain and rearrange or reconfigure their buttons. And so in doing that, in reconfiguring your buttons, rewiring your brain, you change your infrastructure. When you change your infrastructure, you change your disposition. When you change your disposition, you're changing your approach to the world, how you show up, who you show up as, if you show up at all. And then in doing that, the idea is that you're going to change the quality of your life. Drawing on, I'm pretty sure multiple people have said it, but like, what you get out of life is a reflection of who you are. I heard it from Eric Thomas, Dr. Eric Thomas, but I'm not sure if other people said it first or like who want credit for it, but that's where I heard it from. And so you got to think like, what is a you? Or what is a who? Like Dr. Seuss. What is a who? What is a you? What is a person? What is personality? All of those things to me are just clothes that a soul wears. Like, you know, I'm gonna wear a blue t-shirt and a white scarf. That's how I'm showing up in the world, right? I'm gonna show up in the world speaking English. I'm gonna show up in the world, maybe I'm shy, or maybe I'm outgoing, or maybe I'm intelligent, or maybe I'm not really interested in like intellect, but maybe I'm just very social and I'm funny and I'm humorous and joyous and playful. You know, the way that I'm showing up in the world trickles down, and the same way we have on like a chemical and a physical level, you know, that trickle down. We talked about compounds to molecules, compounds, molecules, elements, atoms, quarks, like quantum. You also have like, okay, a person, right? Within that person, you have these levels of analysis that trickles all the way down to the soul that's at the core. So you got like the person, got like their thoughts and their feelings, going back to psychology, you know, and it's funny enough because, you know, taking the neuroscience classes, I think the main difference between, this is a sidebar, but I'm gonna go there because of how my mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure is arranged. You know, clearly I'm talking about one thing and then this other thing pops up. There's some association here. And so neuroscience versus neuropsychology. Well, what is psychology? Psychology is the study of the soul. Neuroscience, the neuroscientists I've come into contact with, again, no shade, you know, I respect their opinions. You know, this ain't like, I ain't hating, I'm just calling a spade a spade. The neuroscientists that I've encountered, maybe it's only been 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, still have unanswered questions about consciousness, and they don't concede the existence of a soul. Whereas neuropsychology literally is the study of the soul. What psychology is, but then you add the neuro. So you add in like understanding of the brain and behavior, plus understanding the soul, but really understanding brain and behavior is a proxy for a deeper understanding of the soul. Like, we're getting closer, which is my whole motivation for joining a program that teaches about neuroscience, is because I'm trying to get beyond where philosophy could take me. Philosophy could give me the questions, you know, but it didn't give me the science, like the physiological part of it, like the pathways and how everything is all connected together. And so I know that's a bit of a sidebar, but going back to where I think I left off at, you know, the trickle down from like the person to their, you know, their thoughts and their feelings. There's like a leap from the mental to the physical. There's a connection, but there's also like a gap, because you can have thoughts and feelings that correlate with some physical aspect. For example, the thought that, man, I got a test in the morning, the feeling of anxiety about this test, but then you have the physical, my heart is racing, you know? Now, to some extent, there's gaps in there, because these things don't necessarily, you know, relate like this. There's gaps, same way there's gaps between, like in your brain, you have synapses. things don't touch directly. But I think, here we go, another tangent. As I was looking into like quarks and like smaller science, like quantum things, or approaching quantum, there's something within the quarks, right? Which is, no, within a proton. And the proton has 2 up, 1 down. Like, what's it? Peace up, A-town down? A proton has 2 up and one down particles. And they're between them, there's what's called a nuclear force. They're not touching, but there's a force that keeps them in position. And you see this, like we see it on a grander scale with gravity, these like invisible forces. We also see it with magnets. Like if you put 2 magnets together, you can't see what's like causing that, but you can feel it. And in a similar way, I think that's that gap area. Like to understand magnetism, or the force that is magnetism, is similar to how we can understand the connection between the mental and the physical, or the mind and the brain. There's a connection there, but things don't have to touch to be connected. They can just be within proximity. And so the test coming up, my anxiety about the test, and my heart racing are all in proximity to each other, because looking at it from a chronological lens, they're occurring at the same time, which is temporal proximity, which is significant because even when you train somebody and you do the associations, time is a factor. Because if you want to train a dog to sit, when you say sit, and you say sit, if it sits the next week, is that what you wanted? No, you wanted to sit within seconds or milliseconds, however, you wanted to sit like immediately when you say it. So, excuse me, not sure if much needs to be said to like justify the significance of time, but basically there's that leap from mind to body, and then all we know about biochemistry, physics, and like quantum physics becomes applicable to the mind because it's from that level down. So you can use all of physics, chemistry, biochemistry up to this certain point. They bubble up until we get to the level of consciousness, right? So you have atoms and elements and amino acids and molecules and proteins that come together to form flesh, right? There's a certain level where flesh becomes conscious, but here's the thing. We don't know if flesh is ever conscious, or if flesh is just animated by a conscious entity, which is my thinking. That flesh itself is not conscious, but there's a force, a being, an entity that animates the flesh, that makes every piece of it conscious, down to the quantum, which is where you get like the double slit experiments and like different experiments that look into like our individual particles conscious, like our quarks conscious. My bad, I got everything written down on this board, well, on this canvas I've been working on. Because a lot of the science stuff is somewhat new to me. Like this is another thing, right? Going back to associations, going back to how neurons are wired together and fired together in the brain. That's all person specific, because we have different senses of like what's important. So we'll associate different things. We have different life experiences that associate different things together. For me, a lot of this science, I'm remembering, like I used to love science in high school. I had a negative relationship with one of my science teachers, 1.5 science teachers, and I kind of like, I was like, forget science, like I wasn't off the teacher. So in some ways I kind of shifted, even though I still stayed with psychology, which is a science. I left like the hard sciences alone. Like I ain't really rock with him. So kind of, but now that I'm older and I'm rethinking them, like, yo, this, for real, this is interesting, and it all connects together. there's actually no subjects when you think about it. When I think about it, it's no subjects. It's all one subject. Like every subject in school, in life, no matter what you studying, it's all parts of one thing. Like the 3 men in the cave, you know? Each subject touches one piece of one whole object. So if you want to get closer to the object, it has to be intersubjective. Intersubjectivity is a proxy for objectivity, because I don't know if objectivity is accessible while in flesh. Now, upon death, upon a physical death, when one soul and another soul can merge like two water drops, when souls can reunite with the origin, because the soul is like one, like solo. But when it's reunited, the soul with the whole, then, at that point, it seems like objectivity is within reach. Because now my soul, everything I know, plus everything you know, plus everything all the other 8 billion people on this planet knows, and animals and all life forms knows together, essentially is the whole is learning itself through the lenses of these souls, like small pieces. It's like the 3 men in the cave touching different parts of the same elephant, and it's like the elephant, the 3 men, is all the same person. They all the same entity. But where do I want to end on this theoretical update? I'm very pleased with being inspired by these recent thoughts and theories. Feeling very enlightened. If anybody has any feedback, feel free to share it. Yeah, I definitely see that you can rewire your brain on a physical level, depending on what you do. Going back to quality of life. So not only is your mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure affecting your quality of life is doubling back. There's a relationship there. Like, you affect your quality of life, but your quality of life also affects you. It affects your beliefs. It affects your schemas. Because you got to think, like, in some ways, life kind of acts on the individual before the individual acts on life. Because you come into the world as a baby. And as a baby, which is why I've been very interested in like human development lately. As a baby, you're more or less inundated with like stimuli. Excuse me. And so when you forming your infrastructure, when you setting up your buttons and your keybinds and you figuring out, okay, how do I need to show up? First of all, what does it mean to show up? How can I show up? How do other people want me to show up? I put it in this paper I wrote recently for this personality class, but I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. 1 second, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so when you think about like, what is this called? It's a game. Like, it's like a wooden board and they got a bunch of pegs. A Plinko board. Plinko board. I hope I'm not advertising them because they ain't paying me. Basically, it's a wooden board with a bunch of like pegs on it. So you got like 100 pegs, like 10 by 10. And you drop like a ball at the top. Boom, and they go boom, 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 and then it lands somewhere. That's essentially the process of living. Like, you born, boom, either in a hospital, in one of them little pools. You might be born like in the ocean, wherever you born, right? You get pushed around by the people around you. They give you a name. They tell you, how to be and how not to be. Even if they don't tell you explicitly, you implicitly learn like social rules, norms, etc. Things like that. You develop a language. You live in a country. You start learning about the economic system and your religion and things like that. As you're doing that, Your brain is doing this. Like them fingers and shoulders is connecting. Boom, 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 boom. If you go to a grocery store as an infant and say, just so happened that day that you go to the grocery store, workers in there arguing over something, don't even matter what they're arguing about, they just loud and they angry. Because that's your first experience at a grocery store, you might think all grocery stores is like that. You might be like, oh, I'm never going to this place again, and develop a fear or anxiety about going to grocery stores. Now, if you get older and that experience gets decontextualized, because this is what happens in traumatic events, but even just life in general, we forget things. Sometimes you don't forget in whole. Forgetting isn't all or none. Sometimes you forget parts, bits and pieces, and it might seem insignificant, but it might be significant later, you know? And maybe it's not even fully forgotten. Maybe it's partially forgotten, you know? Maybe you don't remember right now, but you'll remember 10 years from now. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, nah, nah. But in that process, that person basically configures their mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure. Now, here's the kicker. And I learned this in a different program, but this is the theory, right? If you look at somebody in their eyes, right? Now, your eyes is like on the front part of your brain. Like right behind these eyes, there's brain right there. So when I look at you or you look at me in my eyes, my brain sees your brain. When my pupil lines up with your pupil, your brain and my brain do this. Now, on a physical level, well, actually on a mental level, because as an artist, here we go with tangents, but follow me. As an artist, as a painter, I'm aware that there's blind spots. Like there's things that my eyes will perceive before my mind will notice it. Like I could peep something's off before I can articulate it or before I even am consciously aware of it, but my eyes can see it. Also vice versa. Sometimes, so there's times where like your mind might notice first, and your eyes gotta catch up, or your eyes might notice first, and your mind gotta catch up. Trying to go back where I left, I ain't gonna pause this to rewind, I'm gonna just keep talking. So basically, when you look at somebody eye to eye, and y'all brains line up, even if you aren't consciously aware that your brains are lined up, or you never heard that before, on a physical level, there's this like matchup, right? When you lock eyes with somebody, not only are you, like how they say the eyes are windows to the soul, because when you look through somebody's eyes, because images project, you know, through the eyes, they go down the, you have basically like wiring from the back of your eyes that goes and they cross at this optic chiasm, and then they go like that, they split, right? And so in that process, not only is there the physical component of my brain seeing your brain, there's also the physical component of my mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure is revealed to you in some sense. So you might look somebody in their eyes and you could tell like they hurting, or you could tell like they happy. Like you can make eye contact with somebody and read them without them saying anything. But it's certain thoughts that will come to you, certain associations that you'll connect, because when you look them in the eyes, it'll spark these new ideas, right? Where do you think those ideas coming from? So again, time is significant. So you didn't have those ideas before you looked them in the eyes. You didn't have it after. Maybe you did, but for some reason at that point that you did that, you're like, oh, damn. In your eyes, I can see your pain. Or in your eyes, I can see like you've been betrayed. Or in your eyes, you look like you're about to cry. That's not something they may even consciously be aware of. It's just something you can peep. And that's because when you making that contact, your neurons and how they're arranged are now in conversation with how that person's neurons are arranged. This is theory now, but that's what we're here for, to theorize. This is the philosophical side. And so we also mimic, like if you look somebody in their eyes and you see how their mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure is arranged, you may adopt some of those configurations for yourself. If you come to my house and we both play 2K and I look, or we both play Fortnite and you changed your key bonds, so now X is shoot and circle is jump, like, and we playing together, I might be like, oh, let me change mine to yours, like let me match yours. And that's like when people leave an impression on somebody. Generally, when you're impressing somebody, it's like, oh, I like how they did that. You pick that up, right? So for some people, you look them in their eyes and you see like a sense of power. You like, oh, your eyes look strong. Like, I kind of want that. So you might be like, you might not necessarily know what it is, but your body might know what it is. Your body might pick up some new association or even connecting the two, like, because there's a physical level to which your neurons are arranged and attached to each other, right? Then there's that mental space that's attached to those attachments. So when you look at somebody else, you can see their neural arrangements, and now you can attach your thoughts to their neural arrangements and your thoughts to your own, and you can change your own as well as theirs, because if they're impressed by you, now you've had an impact on them. All of that to say, I know that was maybe slightly redundant, but hopefully I said what needed to be said because it was emotionally gratifying for me to say it, get it out. But all of that to say, mirror neurons have been studied. That's a thing. And we know that people mimic other people. And if you've ever been in like a situation, say you from the same culture as somebody, y'all may share certain illusions with the A. And so you may share certain inside jokes or reference points. Now, inside joke is interesting because that means me and you both are associated with some social construct or mental imagery that's unique. Like me and you both know what the joke is by these words, which is physical. It's a vibration and sound that we hear. But we both get the same picture or similar picture enough for me and you to laugh about this inside joke. You catch the reference. Now, all words are referential. All words are referential. And so, saying that to say, basically, minds aren't limited to physical space, meaning that the thoughts that are going through my mind may be going through your mind, maybe going through your neighbor's minds. Thoughts and ideas circulate in geographic regions and by culture. So, to a certain extent, the mind and just people in general, this move from like psychology to sociology is fluid. Like, we affect each other. The things that I'm thinking about are going to affect what other people are thinking about. Why? Because we're going to have conversations, but also we're exposed to the same thing. So if I'm thinking about it and it's yielding some echo in my disposition, it's yielding some echo in my quality of life, and you're around to experience your quality of life, we're in the same like pool together, it's going to affect you as well. And so we, going back to that Plinko board, we push and pull each other all the time, all day. Like, that's when you get into this concept of freedom. It's like, where does one person's personal freedom end? Well, to a certain extent, one man's personal freedom or one woman's personal freedom can infringe on somebody else's personal freedom. And then that might be the point where you say that it ends, but we affect each other. It's no different from if I'm walking down the street and somebody else smoke and I don't smoke. It's like, damn, your smoke is blowing in the wind. It's affecting me. Now I'm second-handed some smoke I don't even want to smoke. But you had the right and the freedom to smoke. I had the right and the freedom to not smoke. But your freedom is kind of infringing on mine. Even though that's a kind of a sidebar, it's just an example to say, like, your arrangement of your mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure is influencing mine as well. Even though I had the freedom to create my own, they're interrelated. And so the same way I said, like, there's no subjects, in a sense, there's no individuals, because the same way the subjects are all parts of one whole, so are we, conceding the existence of God and souls. Now, if you don't believe in gods and souls, you would say like everybody's idiographic or idiosyncratic or whatever the case is. They're like unique individuals, but you still, even science concedes there's this commonality among human beings, among all life forms. And so I say all that to say, that's kind of where I'm at today. I don't know if that was a lot or a little bit, but I feel a little lighter to just just let it all out right quick. And where does that leave us? Meditation is important. It's helpful. It can help you get more energy, help you last longer, give you some stamina, and it can help you relax. And you relaxing and your quality of life is going to affect the people around you's quality of life. Hence the significance of exposure and being around different environments and like seeing how other people live. When you see how other people live, you hear the echoes of their mental and emotional intrapsychic infrastructure. That person that's calm may have some cognitive schema where they feel as though yelling is not the best way to resolve conflict. Them getting out of character, raising their voices, stressing their vocal cords, increasing their heart rate, increasing their cortisol levels above their norm is not beneficial. So they don't do that. So they don't associate conflict with yelling, which has a neural correlate to it. There has the associations between the neurons and the brain areas for that individual are different. And so being around that person, you may reconfigure your own neural associations and your own cognitive schema, and you may change your own disposition, because in some sense, the disposition's goal is the advantage. Like the benefit that I get from presenting myself this way. If I didn't get a benefit from showing up to a blood meeting in a red bandana, then I probably would have wore a blue bandana or the yellow one. I like the yellow one. I probably would have wore that one. But whatever the case is, people kind of conform in some ways, or basically adapt like animals do, adapt to their environment for success. So when you look at a person's disposition, and this is why sometimes when people say like, they do things they don't want to do, I question it, because it's a theory out there. I didn't come up with it, but like there's some adaptive feature or aspect that's perpetuating a behavior. Even if you say you want to stop, there's some benefit you're getting from continuing, And the same thing is with dispositions and neural arrangements, like how you set up your life and how you set up associations in your mind and in your brain. All that to say, be on the lookout for more updates, and leave some comments if you want, I'm open to them, to hearing them or reading them. If I feel like it, I may not read them. Depends what you say. And I hope that everyone has a great day or night whenever you're watching this. Okay, that's it for today.